Good morning, everyone. Reopening Ontario. Reopening. The plan to reopen. The plan to reopen is as good as reopening Ontario was at reopening Ontario, which is to say, the reopening Ontario plan led to shutting down Ontario. I think the reopening Ontario roadmap is not it. It is more restrictive than last summer, and I think that it is going to. There is nothing that says back to normal. Like it doesn't look like Texas or Florida's version of open and unrestricted. We'll get to that in a minute. And I think the whole show is just going to be on YouTube today. I don't think there's anything too spicy. Everything's about reopening, right? So I might just leave the whole show intact today. Sign up for the newsletter just in case YouTube decides to cut me off for whatever reason. And I also send out a weekly newsletter, which I did not get to yesterday, and I'm hoping to get to today. But I sent it out last Saturday, so I feel like I've got some leeway time. I feel like 5 to 7 days is a lot of days in the news cycle. Okay, so sign up for the newsletter. Also check out the forum. There's lots of interesting conversations. And yeah, it's a good place to hang out and talk about the madness and insanity enveloping our world in Canada. Here is a picture of Justin Trudeau with a MacBook that's not really a MacBook. It's a fake MacBook. It's an HP laptop with a Mac sticker on it. And the internet kind of went crazy about it. Everybody was like, oh, ha, 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 Justin Trudeau. Even his computer dresses up. And I thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, apparently it wasn't his computer. So I didn't report on it. But now American media is reporting on it too. Apparently this wasn't his computer. Somebody else set it up for him. But that's bad optics. And blah, blah, blah. Whatever, either way. Even if it was his laptop, I could believe that. I could totally believe that. Here is one of the top stories. There are many top stories. There are many top stories these days, depending on your perspective and outlook. But this is kind of one of, it's a big story. Infectious disease scientists at Canada's high security lab collaborated with China. This is Globe and Mail from yesterday. So the Globe and Mail still carries a little bit of weight, especially with investigative reports like this. And this one's, spicy. Scientists working at Canada's highest security infectious disease laboratory have been collaborating with Chinese military researchers to study and conduct experiments on deadly pathogens. 7 scientists in the Special Pathogens Unit at the National Microbiology Laboratory, NML, in Winnipeg and Chinese military researchers have conducted experiments and co-authored 6 studies on infectious diseases such as Ebola, Lassa fever, and Rift Valley fever. The publication dates of the studies range from early 2016 to early 2020. I wonder if Rift Valley fever is like a place, and is it racist to say that's Rift Valley fever? Or, what about the people who come there? What about the stigma attached to Rift Valley fever people? Rift Valley people because of Rift Valley fever, right? Like the same argument they had for the Wuhan flu. Okay, anyway, regardless. I think it's funny when sometimes it's racist and sometimes it's not, and we're not supposed to notice, but we do notice because we're humans. Okay, back to this. The Globe and Mail also learned that one of the Chinese researchers, Fei Yan, sorry if I got that wrong, from the People's Liberation Army, PLA, Academy of Military Medical Sciences, worked for a period of time at the Winnipeg Lab, a level 4 facility equipped to handle some of the world's deadliest diseases. This researcher is credited as a co-author on all 6 of the papers. However, on 2 of them, he's listed as being affiliated with both the Winnipeg Lab and the Military Medical Academy. So he's representing both in Canada. Two of the Winnipeg Lab scientists, I can't say the first name, the last name Key, maybe, and her biologist husband, Cheng, were fired in January of this year after the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, as the Globe reported last week, recommended that their security clearances be removed on national security grounds. CSIS had also been concerned about the nature of information Dr. Key may have passed on to China's Wuhan Institute of Virology. Dr. Key, the former head of the Vaccine Development and Antiviral Therapies section at the Winnipeg Lab's Special Pathogens Program, co-authored 5 of the studies. Dr. Cheng participated in 1 study on Ebola. Eric Morissell, spokesman for the Public Health Agency of Canada, PHAC, which oversees the Winnipeg Lab, said the PLA researcher, quote, did work with Dr. Key as indicated in the publications. However, the individual was not an employee of the National Microbiology Laboratory. Mr. Morissette said all individuals working within NML undergo a security screening and must adhere to PHAC's security protocols, procedures, and policies based on the level of access required. The Australian Strategic Policy Institute, a think tank, rates the Academy of Military Medical Sciences, for the PLA guy, as very high risk because it is the PLA's premier institute for military science. The Academy, which led the development of China's coronavirus vaccine, oversees 9 other research institutes in the country. Andy Ellis, former CSIS Assistant Director of Operations, said it is madness for the Public Health Agency of Canada to be cooperating with the PLA, which in recent years has ramped up its recruitment of scientists and invested heavily in medical research as part of its strategy to modernize its military. It's ill-advised. It is the top lab in Canada, Mr. Ellis said in an interview. It is just incredibly naive on their part. Mr. Ellis said it is astounding that the PHAC allowed a PLA scientist into the Winnipeg lab that requires the highest level of security clearance to gain entry. We won't let a Canadian in unless we've done a deep background check, but we let someone in that we don't know anything about. It doesn't make any sense, he said. Shocking. So, I mean, questions abound, right? Questions abound. There's more to this as well. It's all as egregious. It's all crazy. Shocking, right? But not all that surprising. Here's something that I thought that we wouldn't see, or maybe wouldn't see this result. An Ontario court has ruled that the Iranian military's downing of a passenger jet early last year was an intentional act of terrorism, paving the way for relatives of those killed to seek compensation from the country. Good luck with that. Like, dear Iran, we'd like you to pay some money for the terrorist act that tragically took our brother, husband, whatever. Thanks, signed some Canadians. Like, how is that supposed to work? I mean, I guess you could get your lawyer to send it. But I don't know if this is closure or just like confirming what was already known, or it seems like, I don't know. It seems like it is going to be one of those things where you don't ever really get a resolution. It's just going to be one of those things that it's an open secret, right? Yesterday I talked about Nova Scotia and mature minor laws, where they say to kids older than 12 years old, here's an explainer about vaccines. Do you understand the potential risks and potential consequences to taking this vaccine? And the kid over 12 years old can say yes or no. And then the immunizer gets to decide if they are competent to consent. And if they're deemed competent to consent, then the immunizer can administer that vaccination to your child without letting the parent know, without confirming with the parent. I'll show you the paperwork in Ontario that enables them to do this. Now, I worked in schools, and there was a period of time where they told us we weren't allowed to administer Tylenol without parents' consent. And I think that that's still true. If a parent sends Tylenol in and has it at the office, I think they're allowed to give that Tylenol to the kid. But if the parent hadn't already done that, then the school's not allowed to give Tylenol to the child, or like cold medicine or whatever. Or sunscreen. I think sunscreen is even not allowed to be given by the school for whatever reasons, in case there's a bad reaction. I was told, I said, well, like, what if the kid doesn't have sunscreen? Where I'm not allowed to do that anymore? And the person said, well, what if they had a bad reaction? Like, who's responsible for that? And I was like, well, I don't know. And I said, all right, I won't give the sunscreen. But the point is, they're not allowed to do that, but they're allowed to administer an experimental vaccine after they explain it to your 12-year-old. Is this the intent of having an education system? At this point, with all the reopening Ontario stuff, and I've been talking about this a lot, like, I kind of hope they don't open the schools again. Like, I've started getting play dates with kids. We've got regular play dates every week. It's working really well. The kids are having fun. It's great. And they're not being indoctrinated. They're not being forced to had masks on all the time. They're not, this is, they get to make their own choices about that kind of stuff. If they want to wear masks, nobody's stopping them. There's some kids who start wearing masks and then the mask falls off and then they drop the mask on the playground, right? Isn't that a biohazard? Isn't that dangerous, everyone? No? Guess not, right? Oh, well, anyway, BC is to announce. So I'm going to show you that this mature minor garbage that we're talking about, telling your kid at 12 years old the risks and consequences and the benefits of this vaccine, and then they can give it to the kid without consulting the parents, is happening It seems like it's across Canada. It's happening in Ontario. I'll show you the paperwork for that. It seems like it's happening in BC. Here's the news report for that. BC to announce plans for vaccinating children ages 12 to 17. Have a look for this mature minor thing in your province. Let me know. I'll report on it. I'll tell people about it. I'll show you what's happening in Ontario. Okay. Here's region of Peel. Please note, info around the consent for vaccination has been updated. Youth aged 12 plus can consent to immunization on their own behalf, provided that they understand the benefits and risks of vaccinations. There you go. And as with other medical appointments, we encourage family discussion. You should talk about this as a family, but we are going to do this. Here is health support services, and I wanted to show you, here it is, 5.3.3. This is the Upper Grand District School Board PDF, okay? Health support services 509. 5.3.3. Consent to treatment for immunization is not governed by a particular age. Although most students may legally provide their own consent, it is strongly recommended that parents and guardians are included in the decision-making process. Interesting. Okay, just so we're aware. And here is the Upper Grand District School Board. This is Centre Peel Public School Family Handbook, but this is standard practice. Okay, it is recommended that all medication be administered at home. However, we understand that circumstances arise when it's necessary to administer medications at school. All medications, prescribed or non-prescription like Tylenol, will be stored safely in the office. Staff are not allowed to administer medication without prior completion of a consent form. The consent form is available in the office. A log is kept of all medication that is administered. So over-the-counter medication like Tylenol, they will not administer it to your child without consent. You have to sign this consent form, okay? But at 12 years old, the child can consent, right? And this one doesn't even state the age. Is this allowed? Is this unilaterally allowed to give this ability to minors? Previously, it was parental consent is necessary. You can't do things to a child's body like that without parental consent. And yet, the Upper Grand District School Board, just fine with that. Just the Tylenol, could you please fill out this form? You understanding what's happening? Right? Are we on the same page yet? I feel like sometimes I'm shouting into like a hurricane. And I've said this before, I think. And, you might be able to hear that crazy guy screaming on the beach, right? As you hunker down or you look out your window in the hurricane that you're imagining. But probably not. So, I don't know. Reopening Ontario. Let's talk about reopening Ontario. What went largely unnoticed yesterday in the media was that the Ontario reopening plan quietly extends the province-wide lockdown for another 12 days. They got 2 extra weeks out of this. We really need to get on the phones with our MPPs, let them know that they are all toast next election if they do not change course. I don't think they're worried about that. The response is so what's the word? Hold on. It's so divided. I can't come up with the word I was thinking of. It's so divided that on one side, like you've got people who are calling for more restrictions. Like anything being open at all is too much. I saw skate park. Good news. I saw the skate park fences are supposed to be coming down. Apparently the fences and controlled entrance wasn't very good, so they decided the backlash was too much or whatever. Maybe they just had a rational conversation and they decided the fences are coming down. But there was a tweet saying, don't be upset about seeing people closer together. Like, we can do this, it's okay. And I thought, holy cow, like we've done a lot of damage when there's Twitter, like city Twitter accounts trying to rein people in from policing each other because they've been encouraging it for so long. Like it's crazy. It's crazy. So they got another 2 weeks of lockdowns just by announcing that something's going to happen in 2 weeks that is subject to change, right? I don't think that we're going to be getting out of this anytime soon, and I'll show you what I mean, but there's a lot of people who think that too. The Canadians have lost their minds, says Alex Brenson. Ontario has 14.7 million people. One in 11,000. 1 in 11,000 is hospitalized for COVID. Cases are plunging. Vaccinations are soaring. 58% are vaccinated right now. Yet Ontario have 1 vaccination right now. I'll show you that metric in a minute. Yet Ontario has locked down as strict as any U.S. state had last April. No non-essential retail, playgrounds closed, etc. Not quite playgrounds closed, but close. And the Premier, Doug Ford, not the crackhead mayor of Toronto, but that was his brother Rob, just extended the lockdown while promising if his subjects are good sheeple and hit vaccination targets, they may get 10-person outdoor gatherings in mid-June. What is going on up there? What is going on up here? Indeed, America's hat. JP Odysee says, my friends, we've worked incredibly hard to get this far. That's why all COVID-19 restrictions will end on June 2nd with the following exceptions. No outdoor amenities. Restaurants and stores will remain closed. Schools will remain closed. However, you'll be able to play golf. Yeah, that's pretty much what it amounts to. This is a coercive plan to drive vax uptake. That's what they want. They want more people to take the vaccination. So they're tying the reopening plan with the vaccination uptake. And they can say, like, do your part or whatever. And they go through this. It's painstaking. I'll show you a bigger picture of that. What I'm trying to show you here is Ontario's plan is eerily similar to Saskatchewan's plan. And I've seen other plans that are similar, talking about the vaccination targets being tied to reopening. When have we have we ever measured the vaccination rate like this for a particularly bad flu season? Why are we doing this now? Why is this acceptable? Is this not a referendums level change? If it's not a referendum level change, specifically, why did we never do this before and now we're doing this now? Right? And saying that, our healthcare system is overwhelmed is not an argument, because our healthcare system has been overwhelmed since the early 2000s. I remember Dalton McGuinty saying, if we just raise the taxes a little tiny bit, and it's not even a tax raise, it's a tax levy, because he signed a no new taxes pledge, the health tax levy. Yeah, right. That was in 2002 or 2003. Like, this has been a broken system that has been running well above 100% capacity for years. So now all of a sudden we've got to do surveillance for this test and spend billions of dollars not fixing any problems, to then be told the way to reopen is to put our system back to how it used to be when it was a completely broken system, plus all these expensive vaccines and all these tests. And we expect you to take 2 of these vaccines whenever we tell you to, because they're really effective. But we can't show you the data about that. Don't ask. It's very uncomfortable. Right? Seriously, this is how this is going to go. This is where we're going, guys. Like, honestly, this is the graphic for it. It's fine, but I'm not going to go through it too much here. Here is this is quick facts from the Ontario News. This is from the press release. Ontario has administered first doses of COVID-19 to 58.5% of Ontarians, and we're not ready to move out of a full-blown lockdown. This is what it looks like. Okay, step 1, step 2, step 3, but this is what it looks like, kind of easier. Okay, so step 1, or before step 1, is where we're at right now. So we've totally abandoned the gray lockdown color-coded system completely. We've got step 1, step 2, step 3, and pre-step 1, which this shows somebody has no plan. They're just flying by the seat of their pants for selling whatever this is. Like, this was not a long-standing plan to roll out to open things up. This is like, I wonder how we can get 2 more weeks out of them sitting in their homes doing nothing about the economic destruction we're wreaking all across this country. How can we do that? How can we sell them on that? That's what it feels like is happening to us. Anyway, step 1, 25% retail capacity for essential retail and non-essential at 15% capacity. What's the rationale on that? And step 2, you've got essential retail at 50% capacity, non-essential at 25% capacity. What's the rationale and science on that? Like, at 25% capacity, COVID has shorter legs. And so it takes longer for COVID to walk a square centimeter, right? And so, but at 15%, COVID has bigger legs and can get to more people, right? Like, what? It's insane. It doesn't make any sense. Like, these people think that, or do these people think that we don't have access to common sense and like scientific papers prior to 2020? It's crazy. It's crazy to think that essential retail should should qualify for 50% capacity, and non-essential retail should be at 25% capacity. Who decides what's essential and non-essential? What is the difference in COVID transmission at these capacity rates? What capacity do churches get? Liquor stores get 50% capacity. I mean, lucky them, right? They're essential, I guess. 50% capacity. Restaurants and bars, outdoor dining in step 2, indoor dining with some restrictions. I wonder what some restrictions means. There's no pathway to open. This is pathway to restrictive open to close you down in September when we have to close down the economy again because the ICU rate is getting too high and Doug Ford's getting nervous, right? And the science table is given too much power. Personal care services in step 2, they're open at 25% capacity, step 1 closed. So we don't get to have haircuts back. They were supposed to be open yesterday. We don't get to have haircuts back until step 2. What is that, June 12th? They're getting 2 extra weeks. Everything's closed down. Golf's back? I hope you're a cart girl and not a hairdresser. Like, jeepers creepers, right? A cart boy? Whatever. Hairdresser can be a male, right? Okay, anyway. Sports and recreation and fitness facilities. And there's a whole bunch of this stuff that doesn't make any kind of sense at all, right? It doesn't make any kind of sense at all. Outdoor recreation amenities, open. Yay. Because keeping them closed is crazy. Water features are closed. Outdoor splash pads get open in phase 1. So do we have to wait until the 12th or whatever on phase 1? Or whenever phase 1 comes into being. Day camps, based on the guidance from the chief medical officer of health. No unions in the daycares though, right? So nobody to lobby to get the medical officer of health to close them down. I wonder what it would take. And I hope that it doesn't happen, but at this point, like, I'm not holding my breath. These people have betrayed every promise and oath that they've made, honestly. The people who have made oaths to uphold Constitution, oaths to uphold the freedom and tradition of democracy, oaths to dutifully represent their constituents, oaths to basic charter rights and the basic governance of our country. These people have thrown it all out the window in order to protect a small portion of the population who are, well, I mean, I've got the numbers at the end of the show. It doesn't make sense to sacrifice what we've sacrificed to have the outcomes that we've got. It is an affront. It is insulting. It is an atrocity what these people have done. And I hope that they're held accountable, but I'm not holding my breath. I don't think that that's going to happen. I think the public have a very short memory, which is why we've lost all of our freedoms. Do you like paying the mortgage on your prison? Right? Like, it's very interesting. It's very interesting what's happening, right? An open air prison where they can take away your outdoor amenities, right? But commercial filming and TV productions are fine. Open with no audience. No more than 50 performers on set. This is a set. Okay, everyone, filming and haircuts can begin. Click. Right? Jeepers creepers. Oh, and they'll say that's lying. I don't think that's lying, right? You can put it up on YouTube. Gatherings. They want to have max outdoor 10 people for outdoor gatherings. And they say large outdoor gatherings of 10 people. Like, oh yes, people as far as the eye can see in my large 10-person outdoor gathering. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. You can't have a music festival with 25 people. Large in stage 3, large indoor and outdoor gatherings and organized public events will with size limits. What size limits? Like what? Doug Ford's slow, timid reopening plan will keep Ontario largely shut down for much of the summer, even as increasing vaccinations make the province safer every day. Doesn't make sense on any level, my National Post column. I noticed that there's absolutely no plan for restaurants to ever fully reopen, says Chelsea Smith. Detroit Tigers across the bridge in Windsor there, right? Or Sarnia, Windsor area, says, we can't wait to celebrate with 41,000 fans. We're going to show everyone that no one roots like Detroit roots. Ticket info coming soon. So the Tigers are having some baseball, and we're not allowed to drive over there to participate with the sanity, right? We're not allowed to do that. Bonnie Crombie, Patrick Brown have been asking for a month. Time for Ford Nation to put the basketball nets back up. Not everybody has a cottage for Victoria Day weekend or can golf, right? Yay, we're so open and everything's so airy and light. Yay, welcome to Victoria Day weekend in Canada. if you saw this and thought like that was North Korea, would you feel sorry for the North Koreans? If it's Mississauga, is it different? Right? Like, it's incredible what's happening in our country. Nobody seems to care. Here's the CEO of Cineplex. It's absurd, he says. Ontarians will not be returning to the movies and thousands will not be returning to work. It is absurd. We are all losing the summer. Canadian cinemas have welcomed more than 6 million guests during the pandemic, and there have been 0 resulting cases of COVID-19 in Ontario, Canada, or the world. The science and evidence is literally on Ontario's doorstep. We've been operating safely in Quebec since February through the entire third wave, while allowing 250 guests per auditorium. Based on what we heard today, cinemas will be locked down in Ontario longer than any other jurisdiction in the world, all due to a government that ignores the facts. Yes, basketball courts, dangerous to, well, here's the ages that Roman Baber pointed this out the other day, and so I'll just move this up a little bit. Every life is precious, but a fair risk valuation is good for health and policy. 89% of COVID deaths had 1 comorbidity, 65% had 2+ comorbidities, 46% had 3+, 95% were 65 and up, 86% are age 70 and up, 70% are in long-term care or retirement homes. Let's be less afraid and look at good decisions. So are there a lot of that demographic playing basketball in public parks? This is not about a virus. It's not about a virus. YouTube's mad at me now. Sorry, YouTube. Jim Watson, the mayor of Ottawa, says, please, Doug Ford, reconsider your decision to not allow splash pads to open at the same time as other outdoor activities like golf and basketball. It is going up to over 30 degrees this long weekend. Please retweet and email your MPP. And here's business leaders not happy with Ontario's reopening plan. It's not a reopening plan. It's we're going to keep you locked down for 2 more weeks and see if we can get away with it. They will. They have. There's nobody left to fight against it. The restaurants have been basically silenced. The retail, the CFIB is sharing pictures of his 12-year-old son being inoculated. So he's on board. He's pledging fealty, man. That's bending the knee, right? And so what do you expect to happen now, right? This is just running the clock through the summer with the closures and seeing how much more they can get away with before we go into another lockdown in September. I hope I'm wrong. I don't think I'll be wrong. And I'll be shocked if the schools open as normal. I'll be shocked. I think that we're done the school year. I don't think people are saying, oh, June. I've got a little bit of school stuff coming up in a minute, but I don't think so. I don't think it's going to happen. This guy's a criminal attorney, David Amber. He says, Doug Ford, if you don't fully reopen Ontario on June 2nd, you will unquestioningly go down in history as the worst premier in Ontario history. Put an end to your disgraceful crisis management and reopen Ontario. It's not crisis management. I think he's doing exactly what he was put in place to do, right? Brian Higgins, and this is the official account of the Office of Congressman Brian Higgins, New York 26th, representing portions of Erie and Niagara counties. He says a 30-day extension of the U.S.-Canada border shutdown with no further exceptions for those vaccinated, no goals to expand crossing, no family reunification, and no plan is unacceptable. We need progress on reopening the border. It is essential for families and our binational economies. It doesn't seem like they really care about the economy at this point in time. Okay, schools. New from somebody, Ontario schools could reopen in June, and although doing so would increase COVID-19 cases, such a move may be manageable in some regions, says the province Science Advisory Table. Mark Toey says, this is not science. This is not the mandate of COVID Science Ontario. This is punditry, pure and simple. Ontario's science table has been an unmitigated failure. It's populated with some professional scientists and dozens of amateur policy analysts and wannabe politicians. Shut it down. Yeah, isn't that Imgren guy a wannabe politician? I like this gif. Screaming at the sky. Dr. David Williams confirms that he would like Ontario schools to be reopened in June. Apparently what Doug Ford is waiting for is the consensus of everybody to reopen schools. Like, he wants the science table. He wants everybody on board to reopen schools, and that's not going to happen. And I don't see, like, we've got all sorts of jurisdictions where schools are open and functioning, and that's fine. But as I've said again, I don't want to send kids into a place where they're being treated worse than prisoners, right? By prison wardens who have been emboldened by their unions I've seen videos of some teachers down in the States telling kids like, I don't want to get sick and die. And, kids who question the mask policy, or kids who question the mandatory nature of vaxxing or anything like that, are seen as, as we're being pushed to see people like me, I guess, like as ne'er-do-wells and shit disturbers and whatever. So it's very interesting to see all this play out. I don't want kids in that environment. I don't. I think that it's better to be doing what is currently happening for some of their education, because a lot of parents are just checking out. Like, a lot of parents aren't making their kids go on these Google Meets that are failing. And maybe that will wake people up. Maybe it'll become apparent when the kids are not learning anything and the teachers have been paid a few years of full-blown salary and plus all the money that it costs to maintain the schools and the servers. Maybe then they'll just migrate everybody online and say, oh, we've got to get rid of the schools in order to pay for all the servers. Who knows? They'll rationale the rationale, and then they'll sell it to people, and it won't matter if it actually makes sense, because they'll just put it on a loop 24/7. They'll repeat it, say it louder, and eventually the public will totally believe it. Right, Catherine McKenna? Almost all Alberta K-12 students to return to classrooms next week. This is May 19th. Just a reminder how out of touch Ontario is, right? But Manitoba and Alberta are both introducing restrictions or taking a long time to reopen whatever closures they've got. Currently, gatherings with people outside household prohibited starting Saturday in Manitoba. This is to shape your behavior so you don't get together with friends and family over the long weekend. This is the country we live in now. Like, do you think that you're free this way? Like, is this freedom that you knew in 2015? Right? Can you imagine if the Harper government was doing this? Right? This is playing with people's freedom in order to achieve a political goal. And the political goal is being sold as for your safety. But when challenged on that, they fail to provide the evidence that is necessary to make people feel that what they're saying is true. So it's very interesting to live through. It's horrifying. Make no mistake, it's horrifying. Okay? Here it is. Manitobans will soon only be able to gather outdoors with people they live with, and only one person per household will be allowed to enter a business, announced Manitoba's Chief Provincial Public Health Officer. Dr. Brett Russo and Manitoba Health Minister Heather Stevenson announced new public health restrictions ahead of the May long weekend, as public health officials reported a record single-day COVID-19 case count Thursday, and the local ICUs are near capacity. They're almost close to capacity. If the capacity were less, they would be. As of 12:01 a.m. Saturday, people will only be allowed to gather outdoors with people they live with unless they live alone. Then they can still have one designated visitor. Only one person per household can enter a business to purchase essential items, though there are exceptions for people such as single parents and caregivers, Rusin said. We have to take these stronger actions to protect Manitobans, to protect our healthcare system, said Rusin. It's of course frustrating because we've been at this for so long, but we can see from our numbers that it's absolutely required to change what we're doing right now. A record 603 new COVID-19 cases were reported in Manitoba on Thursday, pushing the total known cases to 4,000. That's the total number. And that's like 2 seasons, right? Like, it's the end of the flu season last year, starting in March, or at some point in March, and then all of the 2020-2021 flu season. Anyway, it doesn't matter. 3 more Manitobans have died from the illness, pushing total COVID-19 deaths in the province to 1,019. The new public health restrictions come a day after Manitoba sent 3 COVID-19 ICU patients to the hospital in Thunder Bay, Ontario, because the recent spike of severe cases put the local ICU capacity at risk. So we're sending positive COVID-19 ICU patients from one province to another, but we're limiting travel, non-essential travel between the provinces, and sending confirmed COVID cases directly to hospitals. Have I got that right? That's correct? Huh. Isn't that weird? Isn't that a strange way to deal with a crisis? Isn't that a strange way to deal with a very infectious disease? Manitoba Premier Brian Pallister told reporters earlier Thursday that there have been surges in COVID-19 cases after Thanksgiving, Easter, and spring break. The new restrictions announced Thursday afternoon aim to stop that from happening this Victoria Day weekend, he said. Nudge, right? It's not even a nudge. They're using like the power of the law. Like, it's a cudgel, right? Like, we will remove your freedom in order to achieve this result because it's for your safety, comrade. New column for the late risers, a wake-up call. Don't book the spot on the patio. Kenny says 4 to 6 weeks for reopening. 4 to 6 weeks, COVID-19, Alberta, the donkey and the carrot. It doesn't matter 4 to 6 weeks. They'll reset the goalposts again, right? If you think that it's going to open then, I've got some lovely swampland to sell you in Florida. It's oceanfront property in Arizona, right? Like that, this is, you understand it's false, right? It's a false hope. The reopening plan that follows Texas and Florida isn't coming in Canada. It's not ever coming in Canada unless we take it. And at this point, that seems unlikely, because if you tell people they're not going to open up on May 20th, I have it in a chat in all bold. They're not opening up on May 20th. And somebody was like, dude, like, chill. That's so long. They won't, politically, they won't be able to handle it. And I'm telling you, yesterday I talked about the goalposts moving on climate change shocked me until I watched the goalposts moving on COVID-19. You can literally change your mind a couple of times in a week. And the public just kind of goes, yeah, all right, okay. I'll close the business. Fine, no problems. And they'll attack other people, struggle session, if they don't also agree that they should just blindly listen to the government. Close the business to bankruptcy to protect our healthcare system. And please don't pay attention to those opium overdoses, because that would be uncomfortable to explain. Really, it's so incredible. So Alberta's shut down. Manitoba's shut down for your safety, comrade. And Ontario, there is no hope whatever to reopen. No hope whatever. And here, people are fighting against the laws against peaceful protests that have been popping up across the country. Because now that you've got people locked up in their homes, you don't want those pesky people thinking that they can have a mind of their own and going out and protesting. No. You have to make that illegal, right? Charter rights violations. Listen, that was last year. Catch up. Charter rights? Those haven't been. We've been under martial law for a year. Charter rights. You let me know when that court date hits. Please. Rising peaceful protests or peaceful unrest will become violent. This is our future. Those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable. Nova Scotia injunction blocking protest, unjustifiable limit on free expression and protest. Here's the whole article. I'll talk about it now. CCLA. A court injunction that bans protest against public health orders in Nova Scotia should be modified or set aside, says the Canadian Civil Liberties Association. Kara Zweibel, sorry if I've got that wrong, the association's director of fundamental freedom, said Tuesday that the injunction is an indefinite ban on freedom of assembly and expression that is unjustifiable. Zweibel said her organization's concern is that the court order issued Friday prohibits any and all protest activity during the province's state of emergency, something that she says runs counter to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. It does. That protest right is a very fundamental one in a democratic society, she said in an interview, adding that the injunction goes too far. We think it should be set aside or significantly narrowed, said Zweibel. Said the association would prefer to work with the province to modify the exceptionally broad terms of the injunction, but it is willing to challenge it in court if necessary. She wrote Monday to Premier Ian Rankin and Justice Minister Randy DeLaury asking for a discussion. The letter calls the injunction a two-handed axe where a scalpel would have sufficed. It says that if the province is unwilling to amend the court order, we will be seeking to set aside or vary the court's order to ensure the fundamental charter right are not unduly and indefinitely restricted. So there's problems with telling people that they're not allowed to protest. And part of the problem is the protest right is enshrined in our charter. And putting aside charter rights, well, that indicates that maybe we're in a state we don't understand at this point in time, right? Maybe we're in a situation where does the charter still apply? According to the Calgary police chief, the charter applies and legitimate protests can go ahead. But if you have a music festival as a protest or a rodeo as a protest, that's not a legitimate protest. So how are they deeming what's legitimate? What's the guidebook? Can you look at it? Or do the police make a call on the ground deciding for themselves and for the protest, right? And who governs that? There's so many questions and it's so muddy, right? Like people, and not that they don't care, but people just don't care, right? That's why I'm very interested in the wonkiness and the policiness like the wonkiness is like the details. I think the meat and potatoes of what the actual bill says. What does, like when I look at the Section 22 order for mandating masks in the community, right? I read, what is it? I want to understand, what does it say? Because you can hear masks are mandated, right? You can hear that on the radio. You can hear that at the shopping, I don't know, the radio at the shopping mall. Every 5 minutes it breaks in and tells you to social distance and wear masks. You can hear all the rhetoric, but I want to read what it actually says. And then if there's an interpretation, I worked in unions as well, right? So like the governing documents is like, this document says X, you're doing Y. Explain how you can do Y, or we need to continue doing X, right? And I feel like our governing documents are thrown out the window. That's a long way of saying all that, I suppose. Anyway, back to this. Remember yesterday or the day before when I mentioned that the Ontario app was tracking data, and I said, of course it was tracking your data. Like, if you believe the government in the first place, like, more fool you, right? And anyway, the UK version is doing exactly the same thing. So the UK's NHS COVID vaccine app is collecting data on individuals' family, social circumstances, generic biometric details to uniquely identify an individual and even alleged criminal behavior. In other words, a social credit score. So yeah, it's concerning. I wonder if our app could be turned to the same purpose. I wonder if they're building pieces of different things to connect them all up later, right? Because, you know, building a database is hard. Building the infrastructure for restaurants to collect everybody's name and, you know, track them that way is kind of hard. But if you had a QR code and then you plugged it into a database and Bob's your uncle, and then connected that up to medical records and then made everybody verify on their phone by an app, right, with their driver's license, then boop, it's all connected, right? Nice and easy. It's not easy, and people would never do it without maybe not understanding what they were doing. But the UK is building the infrastructure. This is what that is, right? And I don't know how to make it more clear. It feels like, I said at the beginning, it feels like yelling into a hurricane. And that's kind of a combination with we're 30 guys with muskets and they've got nuclear bombs. They've got a cohesive message. And the message on the right is there's problems with where they're taking us. And nobody can even agree what the specific problem is, because nobody can even agree what the specific direction they're taking us to is. I mean, even try getting 10 people together and deciding what's actually going on here. Like, and trying to figure it out based on, you know, some semblance of facts and stuff. Have a conversation, see if you can come to a consensus. Good luck. It's very interesting, very difficult, very difficult. And without that, without pushing, without agreeing on something and then saying we should do X, we should do this thing, it doesn't get done. It doesn't manifest by itself. So, and if you organize that way, and many groups have tried, they ignore the fundamental piece of you have to anticipate what is going to counter you, right? And if you anticipate usual political pushback, okay, fine. But if you don't anticipate Antifa, if you don't anticipate Twitter bots, if you don't anticipate having your reputation ruined on purpose by people whose job it is to ruin your reputation, to take what you said and twist it into something that they can use. If you don't understand that that's the road you're going down and have a counter to that, then you're destined to lose, because that's just the first hurdle. If you can get past that, then you can actually maybe have your message penetrate, right? But even then, look at what they did to Trump. Trump wasn't nearly as bad a guy as the media portrayed him as. The media version of Trump was a much worse person than Donald Trump himself. But look what they did to him. If you happen to succeed and break through, the people will hate you because they will believe what the media says. And if they don't believe it, they'll get enough Twitter bots to make it seem like that's what is the public perception is, right? If you don't understand that, that that's the battlefield you're stepping onto, you're destined to lose. They will crush you. They will ignore you. And then if they notice you, they'll crush you. Sorry, I've lived it, right? Sorry, it's just how it is. Are you aware that today the Federal Reserve announced that it will be creating a central bank digital currency? It will be tied to a digital ID. They don't say it out loud, but the idea is, of course, a vaccine passport. All too plausible. I've said yesterday, it's like we're like a train on tracks, and the inevitable station is vaccine passports. That's where we're going. That's what all of this says. The Reopening Ontario Act, nothing is back to normal yet. Nothing is ever going back to normal. And there's no path for that. And I think that the path for that is vaccine passports. If you want to participate in normal society again, then you'll do this, and then we'll let you back into society. That's what I think that they're going for. And the crypto that they're setting up, I think I've read China's a little bit ahead setting up their cryptocurrencies. Other central banks are looking at cryptocurrency in order to, and they'll sell it in all sorts of, it'll be a green currency, but fundamentally that just means they can turn it off. They can even geofence it. If you leave a certain area, your money won't work at that Walmart. Sorry, you're from Guelph. This is a Fergus Walmart. You're a little far. You're a little far. What are you doing here? Right? Like, doesn't work. Or it'll work this time, but not next time. FYI. Right? Like, I don't know, man. I don't know. Scary. Hundreds of businesses in Ontario are getting access to rapid COVID-19 test kits. CTV London, Scott Miller. They've had these rapid testing kits for a while. I don't want to give up my freedom to assess my personal health over to a flawed test. Thanks. I would not like to hand it over to a test that wasn't flawed either, but every test is inherently flawed to some degree, and it doesn't seem like we're taking that into account with the testing numbers and all that stuff. So it seems very concerning to open up businesses as a potential place to harvest further testing subjects, right? Because let's say you get one false positive in 100 or even 1,000, right? How many days does it take to get 1,000 tests? And if all small businesses have these tests, right? Even 10,000. Place like Ontario, every business you go into, you have to have a test, or do you get, say, a testing card? You see where this is going? The inevitable station? I'm sorry to be so single-minded on this, but I feel like if we don't talk about what's happening, it's going to happen. Like, it's going to happen anyway, I think. Like, it's happening. We're on the train, and we can see the station. And we're like, well, I hope it doesn't stop there. That doesn't look very good. Yeah, so testing, farming out your ability to decide if you're healthy or sick, that's not great. Cancer surgeries are resuming in Ontario. I wanted to talk about this because she's been lobbying the Ontario government for a month to get her cancer surgeries restarted, and she's got a date on June 26th, I think. But it's a day surgery, and then she's got another one later on in the year. So, I mean, that's good, but we're in a situation where we shouldn't be begging for the service, the basic service that we pay for with our taxes. We should be demanding that the emergency is prepared for in our healthcare system, and that our healthcare system isn't locking elderly people in their rooms to for months on end. Like, what's happening is not good, and having people miss surgeries is going to increase the mortality rate. People are going to die sooner because they didn't catch something fast enough. That's not good. And the outcomes of all of these lockdowns, the outcomes of all of this stuff that we've done, that we've allowed over the last year, and that we're continuing to allow, is a net loss for us. We lose. Okay, here's an example. If you have $1,000 and you buy Bitcoin at $70 when it's at $70,000 a Bitcoin, and then that money, and then Bitcoin loses half of its value or goes down to $40,000. That money's not coming back. You lose. You lost on that bet, okay? It could come back. Maybe. You might get back to zero. You might get back to that 1,000, but you don't have any of those wins. That's back to zero. That's where we're at right now, right? We're invested in this, and our investment has lost value because Ontario has been, you've had a year of your life stolen from you. You've had no dance recitals, no gym time, no hockey leagues or baseball leagues or golf leagues or anything like that, right? Like, you've had these things removed from you because the government said it wasn't safe, and you didn't get a say. And in addition to all of those things, in addition to having those day-to-day things that you pay for removed, you also had access to healthcare, justice, and education for your children removed. And we're expected to sit around and say this is fine. We're paying taxes, we're paying people salaries who are sitting online and who are not necessarily doing the job that of teaching, say, or of completing their judicial duties, the judge duties, the court duties. They shut it all down. And is that what we should be paying taxes for? For a response that's so tone deaf, that's so poor, that it hurts us? Should we be paying taxes for should our grandkids be paying the taxes to dig us out of this hole that has been made by this awful policy and tone deaf, ridiculous inability to respond to the facts that are in your face? As the CEO of the cinema says, like, it's on your doorstep, man. It's right there. They've been functional in Quebec since February. What we're doing is harmful, and there's no reason for it. It's intolerable. Ontario's leadership is intolerable. Canada's leadership is intolerable. I'll leave it there. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out SpeakingMoistly.co. And have a wonderful, wonderful